and you'll be able to hear me when I speak. Okay, guys, I do welcome you to my lesson for today, where we are going to be looking at analytical geometry, which should serve as a revision for some of you. But an assumption is that all of you guys have done it in grade 10, but we will now be doing some more advanced problems. So let's see, guys. Ethan, Lavella, Nomfundo, Nono, One, and Serene, are you guys okay? Oneile, is everything okay on your side?
Yes, sir.
Can you hear me? Can you see my screen?
Yes, sir.
Yes, sir.
Okay, then it's fine. So this is how we are going to be doing today's lesson, honorable members. So what I'm going to do, it is to go through that given statement, look at the given diagram, and then from there we'll just browse through the questions. But on your side, as we browse through all of that, you will ask me the questions when necessary, and in the end you will have to do calculations on those problems, and then you will send a photo while we are still live. I'm going to check, and then very quickly we do the fractions, because I want to see how you guys make mistakes on this. So now let's see. Question number 3, it says in the diagram we are having point A having the coordinates of 6 and -2, and then B, it has 2 and 15, and C having the coordinates of -4 and 3. And these are the vertices of triangle ABC. And they say M is the middle point of AB. N is a point on CA such as that. MN is parallel to BC. Okay, that we can see the diagram. So when we check at that given diagram, it looks like all they have stated in the statement, it is clearly represented on the diagram. And we have a point in the first quadrant, which seems to be correct because all the points in that quadrant, in the first quadrant, are positive. In the second quadrant, yes, those values, they look convincing because we have the x being negative, y being positive. And then in the fourth quadrant, we have x values being positive, y values being negative. We can see some lines are equal there because of how they've represented them, and some are parallel because of how they are represented. First question being 3.1, they want you to determine the coordinates of M being the midpoint of AB. There shouldn't be an issue on that one. And then 3.2, determine the gradient of line MN. Okay, there shouldn't be an issue there, but you might just need to think deeper based on the given information. And now they say hence or otherwise, determine the equation of line MN in the form y is equals to that. Because it's given 2 marks, it shouldn't be an issue as well. You just need to remember that every time when you calculate something, rather write there with a pencil to remind yourself of what you've calculated. 3.4, they will want you to calculate with resins the coordinates of N. So that means you will need to find the coordinates of N based on whatever resins. So it looks like you will definitely need to do some calculations. And whatever the calculation you do, have a reason to say, I'm doing it this way because that line and that line, whatever, and that line and that line, whatever. And the reason is because of when we have these things with the lines being in this manner, that means that. Okay, now 3.5, they say if A, B, C, D, in that order, you see now, they never mentioned D up until now. So when they say if A, B, C, D in that order is a parallelogram, now they want you to determine the coordinates of point D. This may be a tricky one, but every time you're confronted with that question, you just need to remember that a parallelogram, that means you must be having a line which is parallel to BA and another line which is parallel to BC. So maybe that if we are having a parallel line would be something like that. And then a parallel line or a line being parallel to that one would be something of that nature. So possibly D could be a point which is somewhere there, just so that this line can be parallel to that line. And again, this one can be parallel to that one. Something about this is that it therefore forms something of that nature where you possibly have that being the common point, where in most cases, if you know what that point is by using those two, you can therefore use that point and that point in order to get to that point. That's how tricky it can get in grade 11, even in grade 12. So guys, any questions for me, or are you ready to start and make your own mistakes, where I will correct you based on your mistakes? Any questions on your side based on what I've just discussed? Or are you ready to attempt those questions?
No questions, sir.
No questions, sir.
No questions, sir.
Okay, then it's fine. So that means no question. Okay, so now you need to work it out. So remember to take a screenshot just in case something happens. But this question has to be, all of it, it has to be answered before end of the lesson, so that I will guide you in terms of what you're supposed to do or how you're supposed to answer certain question. So that means maybe let's say at 2040, that's when you should be submitting. It's a very long time to be doing this question, because in an exam, you have less than that to be done with this question. So that means the last 20 minutes will be used in answering the questions, and also for me to check what you've done. Okay, guys, you may start. I'll just mute myself in the meantime as I'll be waiting for you guys. So to submit, you take photos, you send via WhatsApp inbox, and I will check immediately, check what mistakes you've made, how you made mistakes, and then I'm just going to, every time when I see mistake, I'll just notify you of how you made a mistake, how to avoid it, and all of that. So don't worry when you're making a mistake. I need those mistakes so that all of us can learn from mistakes. Guys, time to submit. It is definitely time to submit. I just want to quickly check this last one. Guys, time to submit. Okay. This is what happens on triple members. A very good attempt by those who submitted. But something that you need to be aware of is that definitely the middle point will be calculated using the midpoint formula, where you have your 2 that you plus it with the 6, and then it gives you 8 that you divided by 2, it gives you 4. You have 15, you minus that, divided by 2, you end up having 13 over 2. So something that you should be aware of is that do not write your answers as decimal under this topic of analytical geometry. You must write it as a fraction, or you leave it as a SAT, or you leave it in SAT form, meaning you leave it while having the square roots, having the square root of whatever, but you must not and you must never write it as a decimal. Okay, so now they want you to determine the gradient of line MN. Someone indicated that MN, that line is perpendicular to that line, which is wrong, honorable members, because we were not told in the statement, and again, we don't have that 90-degree sign. So we must never assume that line to be perpendicular. Even if it may look like it's perpendicular, we must just never be tempted to assume that it's perpendicular. But rather, you can see that line is parallel to that line. So that means they share the same gradient. So what you can do, it is to calculate the gradient of that line. Then you will know that the gradient of that line is the same as the gradient of MN. Let me calculate it on my side and say fraction pattern. We have 15 that we minus 3 over 2 minus negative 4, and I'm getting 2. So the gradient of that also should be 2. Why? Because those two lines are parallel to each other. When the question says hence or otherwise, chances are high that you might need to use the answer that you calculated above. That is what that hence should remind you. When they say otherwise, it means you can still use other ways in order to answer this question. So remember, in analytical geometry, we just know that it's a game of two things. They want you to write the formula in that format. What we know is that the gradient for that line is equals to 2. And then we just need one point which is on that line. And that point is point M, the one for the middle point. That is the point that we can use. So that means you'll just be substituting wherever you substitute. And maybe maybe here you can have your 2 into your 2, which is 4. So it's like what you're looking for is the C value, which will end up being 13 over 2 that you must minus it by 4. It gives you 2,5. But you don't write it as 2,5. You will therefore say C is equals to 5 over 2. I see some of you guys write it as 2,5. No. You write it as 5 over 2 and never as a decimal under this topic. That should be the answer for that one. Guys, up to this point, any questions or do you guys notice your mistakes?
Yes,
Are we all together? Do you guys notice your mistakes?
Yes, sir. Understood. Okay.
Yes, sir.
Now they say calculate with reference the coordinates of n. From my understanding, even though you may not have a vast amount of knowledge on Euclidean geometry, but if this line is parallel to that line, and this line starts from the middle point of these 2 points, chances are high that this is also the middle point of these 2 points. So that is why what I would do is to calculate the midpoint using these 2 points. And that should be the coordinates of n. In short. And then with this question which says if A, B, C, D in that order is a parallelogram, determine the coordinates of point D. You don't need to be a magician to work out this question, honorable members. But as we assumed that possibly that point over there, it could be our point D. You just need to remember that the diagonals share the same middle point, meaning from that point to this point, they share the same middle point. Even though I did not draw this thing to scale, but the middle point should be that one at point N, which means you can use the midpoint formula. Someone has done it and say the point at N equals the x value at B, that you must plus it with the x value of at that new point being D divided by 2. You also do the same for the y value. Let's say y at N should be equals to y at B, that you must plus it with y at that new point D, and then you divide it by 2. And then you just substitute. Because you do have your a y in the middle point, you do have your x in the middle point, you do have point B, what you're looking for is point D. So let's see, guys, did that make sense? Because let's much. Can you see how quickly that question should be sorted out? So let's see. Any questions from your side?
Sir, for question
Or
3.
did everything make sense?
Excuse me, sir. Excuse me, sir.
Guys, any questions from your side?
Yes, sir.
Yes, what is the question, Ethan?
For 3.3, I got y equals 2x minus 13 over 2. I see when you said 13 over 2, you said 2 brackets 2 plus c. Shouldn't it be 2 brackets 4? Because you substitute in the values.
Ethan is breaking, but it looks like the honorable member is commenting on a mistake that I possibly did, because I did substitute that and I was supposed to substitute that
So
there. Here,
use 2.
it is supposed to be 4.
Yes, sir.
And then it's 8, so that means 13 minus 8. Ethan, it looks like it's an error on my side. Let me quickly then correct that and say minus 8. Yes, it is now minus 3 over 2. Ethan, I've just corrected it, honorable members. Now it's okay, ne?
Yes, sir.
I'm hoping so. Guys, anyone with a question? Or did everything make sense?
No questions.
Makes sense. You did well by correcting me, Ethan, because this is a recording. Someone is going to watch it. If it is recorded, later when you have to catch up and you watch this, you're going to be confused as to whether I made a mistake or not. So make sure that every mistake that you notice, let me know so that I can correct it, because if we leave it not corrected, then it will look as if that's how it's supposed to be. And it's going to confuse someone who will be using this lesson to catch up. Okay. That should be the end of it, honorable members. Maybe let me run away and quickly go get my medication, but it looks like we are all okay. It makes sense. Okay. Okay. Until we meet again.